Hello and welcome back to Book Banter. Today is the first Book Banter interview of 2023. So I am thrilled to be inviting Emily J. Edwards, who is the author of the Girl Friday series. She earned her degree in writing, literature, and publishing from Emerson College and took the long road to becoming an author, working over a decade as a wine and spirits journalist. We're going to talk about that. And radio producer and podcaster. She currently lives with her husband and several quadrupeds in Connecticut. So please welcome Emily to Book Banter.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. I think it's really fitting actually to have a debut author be the first of the year. So
Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you. I can't thank you enough for having me. This is so much fun. I've got like the debut author jitters too, where I'm like, let's talk about a book.
buy this book, buy this book,
Exactly.
right?
Have you heard I'm an author?
Exactly. It's such an uncomfortable skin to put on because like we write in solitude and then we have to be public about it.
And then you're like, wait a second. In order to do a signing, I can't be in sweatpants. How dare you?
I know. I have to put makeup on and get dressed and oh, don't bring out the high heels.
Exactly.
So true. So I have to tell you, congratulations on your debut novel. It is fresh and fun and very entertaining. I loved it.
Oh,
So
thank
well done.
you. You
Well
know
done.
the anxiety you have of like, I worked on this for 5 years. Please read it and don't hate it.
I know. It just, or at least don't tell me.
Exactly.
And everybody has different reading tastes, right?
It's so
And
true.
we have different readers have different reading tastes throughout their life too. It doesn't stay the same, right?
It's
So
true.
we kind of
Yeah.
evolve, and depending on what the world's doing, I think we learned that pretty well with the pandemic that we all wanted something a little softer and gentler and
Yeah, I was
not
like,
as
let's try to make this as funny as possible. Like, we're dealing with some
oh
dark
gosh,
stuff, but you can have a
yeah.
sense of humor about it and approach it with,
Yes.
love in your heart.
Absolutely, and you nailed it. That was exactly it. It was funny.
Oh,
She's
thank you.
so spunky. I really, I thought she was a great character. So the character we're talking about is Viviana Valentine, and the title is Viviana Valentine Gets Her Man, and it's a historical mystery, and it's aptly subtitled Girl Friday Mystery, which should tell you everything about the book. You think Girl Friday, you know what it's about. It features a spunky amateur sleuth, and I have to say, Viviana is particularly well crafted. And where on earth did the idea for her come from? 'Cause
Well, I'm obsessed with like 1930s, 1940s, like Katharine Hepburn comedies. And so, like, if you hand me a screwball, I am just the happiest woman on earth. Like, you have the comedies of marriage, you have the comedies of remarriage. I love a screwball comedy. And obviously, His Girl Friday is one of my favorites. Rosalind Russell is just like, she's a broad, you know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
just like it's a very time and place kind of female characteristic that I just love so much, and you don't get a lot of her anymore. And
no.
so I know this sounds really weird, but like in my brain, I always had like an alter ego. And her name was Viv. And she was the type of old woman, like 80, 90-year-old woman who would like smoke a cigarette and drink gin like in the same hand,
Same.
and she wears a lot of
Totally see that.
leopard print, and she's just like, she's a lot. But I was like, who was Viv before she became that? And
Oh,
that's kind of how I got Viviana Valentine, where she's just like, she's going to grow up to be salty. And like, she's the type of person
yes.
who like hits people with her cane,
Yeah.
like she's just that.
Oh my gosh, I hope we get to see her way through to that.
I have so many like other like spin-off series that I like really want to write once I have a time. And I'm like,
Yes.
old Viv is going to be a character in some of these.
That's gonna be really awesome actually, because that's you once you read the book, you will see how easily you could picture that. Like, that is and
She's not
I loved her.
classy.
but she has moments of class, which is what I liked. Like her there were just moments where she was heartfelt. So it was like she delivered something to a person who maybe couldn't have handled her harsh reply, and she
Mhm.
delivered it in a really funny but lovable way. And I think that's what I loved about her the most was just her ability to, she could read people.
Yeah,
Your character can read people. That's really,
thank you.
really good. So that's huge. I loved it. So everybody has to read it. Um, so all of your characters actually are really well defined and they're easy to picture while you're reading,
Oh,
which is
good.
actually quite
Thank
challenging
you.
because it's a large cast.
Yeah, it's
There is a
huge.
lot of people coming and going, and so that takes a huge amount of effort. Um, so, how do you approach making each character unique unto themselves? And do you have a favorite unsung hero?
I do have a favorite character, and I'll get to them in just a second. But like one
Okay.
of the things I genuinely like about mystery novels is that there's so many people in them. Like very rarely can you have a mystery where there's like two people. You know, it's like I
Yeah.
like romance
One
novels,
of
but
you did it.
sometimes yeah, exactly. It's just like I think we know, you know, you have to have so many people involved. And so
True.
like the other part too is that like when you're talking about private detectives, like private detectives can't actually arrest people. It's just not
No.
something that they can do. So you have to bring in law enforcement and all the baggage
Yeah.
that goes with that. And so it's just like there's a lot of people coming and going. And you know, she lives in a boarding house in New York City. And so
Yes.
it's just like,
Fantastic.
you know, New York City. Tons of
Yeah.
people. You just know tons of people when you live in a city. And so it's just like, it would be unnatural if it didn't have more than five named characters. But obviously, you're right. Like, they all have to be different. And so, like, how do you make them different? And it's just like, I deal with like the professions of the women in her boarding house. And it's just like at the time,
Yes.
what did women do? They were teachers, they were nurses, they were moms, and they were secretaries. And it's just like, unfortunately, that's the limits of 1950 of
Yeah.
just like, they didn't do much more than that. You know, waitresses, nurses, things like
Yeah.
that. It's just like,
Yeah.
you have to get to like the essence of it. And I love Dottie so much. Dottie is the kindergarten teacher. I am a Dottie. I am not a Viv. I am not a Betty who's a nurse who's just so adorable and with it. I am Dottie, the spinster, like, you know,
Oh,
kindergarten teacher. And I'm just like, I
yes.
love Dottie. She's so bookish
That's
and I just
awesome.
love her.
She is, yeah. It's so interesting because she's the character to me that kinda stood off to the side
Mhm.
from the rest of them, which is interesting to know that she's your favorite because I could see how, as an author, you would have to stand off to the side a bit to write everybody else, so that's an interesting, little connection there. That's really
Like,
cool.
if anybody's got a secret manuscript in the house, like, it's Dottie. That's what she does after she's done grading papers is she
Right?
just goes and, like, works on a little book. But I do also have a real soft spot in my heart for Mrs. K, who's the
Oh,
landlady,
yes.
and she's just so warm, and she just loves everybody, and, like, that's just another thing that I needed to have in the book where it's just, like, this really strong maternal figure who's not
Yep.
necessarily Viv's mom who's trying to, like, talk her out of doing things, but like the centerpiece of the community of Mrs. K is just so much fun.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I have a Mrs. K in every single one of my novels. The
Yes.
same thing. I have to have them. And I keep going, they're different people. Like they're different people in my head,
Mhm.
but they all have that same maternal um see the see the bigger picture, but also can deal with the small little problem that's in front of them. Like it's
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
that's I
just
love
an
that.
essence of the found family, which I just
Yes.
really, really like because like Viv's parents are elsewhere. She beat feet out of her little tiny town to go to New York City. But
Right.
I'm like, I can't have her be a loner because it just doesn't feel right. Like she needs a found family. And so I can't
And I
put all
think that
that.
she's the right kind of character for that too, where she has that, like you say, that found family, but she still can be very independent and still, so she's getting the best of both worlds without all the judgment.
Exactly. Because could
There's
you
nothing
imagine
wrong with
living in
that.
your mom's house while, like, working for a private investigator? Like, my mother would have locked me in my room and thrown away the key.
Probably rightly so.
Yeah,
Like
it's a
out of
bad idea.
protection. And in that era and wandering around at night, you didn't do that as a single girl.
No,
I don't know if you even
no,
do that now as a single girl,
not
but
in the city.
it's right? It's like,
Yeah,
I was a little concerned about getting out the door this morning for a walk really early.
I know.
Like, it's still dark,
Yeah.
but
Where I
there's
live
cars on the
now,
road.
it's bear and bobcats, but I just left Los Angeles and it's like, no, I'm not gonna no, not late at night.
Different,
Yeah.
right? It's a different yeah. I guess we all have different sleep schedules for a reason. So, were you always drawn to write historical mystery, or is there another calling?
I don't think I was ever gonna write anything else. Like I self-published 2 like adventure novels when I was
Oh,
just trying to like learn how to write books, and they
yeah.
weren't very good. So I've taken them down off of like Amazon because I don't want
Aw.
anybody finding them because they weren't that good. But like you have to teach yourself how to write books and then like, because it's really hard. The 80,000 to 150,000 words just doesn't like
So
happen. So you have to teach yourself how to
no,
do
if
it.
it does if you ever find out how, let me know.
Exactly.
If there's a way to make it just happen, I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to figure it out just like anything else. And your first couple of ones might not be great. And that's totally awesome. Like, even your fourth book, you're looking at it and you're going, man, I really wish I could have learned how to fix that, but didn't.
It's so true. And the other thing too is, I mean, even outside of the craft aspect, but even grammatically, grammar rules change over time.
Yeah,
And
I
what you
know.
and who knew? That I
Like,
had a
I'm still old
conversation.
enough that I knew I was supposed to put 2 spaces after a period, and apparently you don't do that anymore. And I was like,
Do you
since
know why?
when?
I can tell you. I can tell you. I know the
Can
answer to
you?
this one. Yes. So it was because of the typewriter that there wasn't a letter on a typewriter and the space key only move the rod the same amount of distance. So in order to have separation so the sentences didn't run together, you press the space bar twice. When we got to the digital age and Word
Yeah,
and all the other, well, TikTok and any Instagram,
anything.
anybody automatically creates a space at the end of a period. So you don't have to put it in anymore. But it's habit.
It is. It
I
is. I was like, why
corrected.
are we not doing this anymore? I thought that was
Yeah.
just one of those things that was firm. Apparently not.
It
Okay.
was for majority of our life. It was
Yeah,
firm because I mean, I didn't have a computer until now I'm dating myself. I
I
didn't
know. It's like I
have a
learned to
computer
type on
until
a
college.
typewriter. Let me just say that.
Exactly. I took typing class in school.
Yeah. Chunk it, chunk it, chunk it, chunk. It
It
was
was
a
my
very
favorite
visceral
class.
experience. Yeah, exactly.
I loved it. I got an A in that class. It was, you know, and it wasn't chemistry. So,
Exactly. Chemistry, I did not get an A. Chemistry was my
gosh.
first C.
Yeah, that sounds about right, actually.
Yeah, I was not good at that.
No, I no. Or math. Don't
I'm
ask me to do
wondering though
numbers.
exactly, but now I'm wondering if, like, hist I like writing is because I'm finally old enough to remember, like, times people don't remember. Like
I don't know. That's a good question because if I had the knowledge of what I have now, back when Trivial Pursuit was like
oh, I
in
know.
rage, I would have done really well.
Yeah, cleaned up, but
Now nobody wants to play that game.
I
And
know.
it's but it was always the history questions even back then that I'd be like, "Oh, what's the history question? Because
Yeah,
I
I
like
know.
let me land on pink because that
Exactly.
one right? Like it's interesting. I think that if you love history, you just love history.
Yeah,
And you'll
yeah.
if you go back through your childhood, you'll see trails of it. Like in teenage years, I read like historical fiction
Yeah, me
novels
too.
for teenagers. Before that, I was like the you know petulant child who never stopped asking about the family's history. So I think that if it's in you, you just have a deeper sense of wanting to know why. Why
Yeah.
did people do the things they did?
Like, I'm one of those people who needs context for everything, and, like, if I feel like I don't have enough context to make a decision or to understand what's happening, I will ask a million, million, million questions until I get the
Yeah.
context, and that's just one of the things that I like about historical fiction and also just like this period of historical fiction where it's like, I need the
Yeah.
context because this is informing everything that's happening right now. And
Yes.
so it's just like, I need this
Absolutely.
specific time period in order to figure things out.
Yep. That's exactly it. And I think too, when you have the knowledge of what happened in the past, you that's how you learn to go forward. You have that,
Exactly.
oh, we don't do that. We don't
Yeah,
put our hand on the
exactly.
hot stove. We've done that once. We're pretty good.
Exactly. That's
Natural
exactly it.
consequences. The best teachers ever.
Trial and
Always.
error, kids.
Exactly. And that's how I mean, we survive that way, right? So,
Yeah,
so I have to say that I love how historical fiction has such a diverse jumping off point for stories. Um, but even as we look at historical mysteries, just specifically that genre, there are several different types of historical mysteries to choose from. So, did you want to write an amateur sleuth, like to begin with? Is that, or is it like, would you rather write like Sherlock Holmes or
oh, I'm not smart enough
like,
to write Sherlock Holmes.
I, I doubt that.
Like, but you do have to like reconcile with your own like
Yeah.
ability where it's just like, I'm not that good at writing puzzles. Like I can write a good character, but the puzzle part may not be my strength. So we're gonna dial
Really?
it back. Yeah.
That
I mean,
that's fascinating because I usually figure out who did what by the end of the book,
yeah.
and I had no idea.
Oh, good. Okay, but it wasn't
So,
frustrating, was it? Like, were
no,
you just
not at
like,
all
how was I ever
frustrating.
supposed to put that together? Like, yeah.
No, it was like, oh, it was hidden in plain sight. Yeah, and I
Oh,
like I
goody.
knew I won't spoil anything for anybody, but I knew that the character who was there was involved, but I didn't couldn't figure out how.
Yeah.
So, but to the level that it went,
Oh, that's
um,
fun. Oh,
yeah,
that's
so
fun.
totally you nailed that. So,
Oh, thank
no,
you.
no,
Cause,
kudos.
cause like I don't necessarily write mysteries to be like, Trixie Hobbits is, I'm gonna get you. Like, cause that's so
Yeah.
frustrating. Like sometimes you
Yes.
read like Sherlock Holmes novels and you're just kind of like, yeah, that information wasn't there 300 pages ago.
Thank
So
you.
like this is something that like only Conan Doyle could ever think of. And it's just
Yes.
like, that's insane. Like that drives me up a wall.
Well, because it's you're not playing fair.
Exactly. Exactly. It is. I'm sorry. I'm wagging my fingers a lot, but I talk with my hands. I apologize.
I do too. I
Okay.
do mine are below the screen.
Well, yeah, no, I wanted it to be fair. And like I have to admit that I don't like Miss Marple. Like as like I like cozy mysteries,
Ah,
but like the
yeah.
quintessential cozy is always like Miss Marple, and I don't like them because she's not active. Like she usually
No,
sends
she lets it
people.
come to her, yeah.
Yeah, and so she'll like send people to run errands for her. And I was like,
Yes,
who is going to be active, but also like normal? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like Viv is an everyday person. Like you probably
yes,
know someone like her. And I was like, it
yes.
has to be kind of an amateur sleuth.
I like that. I like that reasoning and the thought that went into it because that makes complete sense. Because I think, like, you're absolutely right. The hiding of things, like, you can slide things in and not put a lot of emphasis on it, but you still told the reader. But I don't think any reader really wants to have the wool pulled over their eyes. Like,
No, it's so frustrating. It's like really
it is.
insulting as a reader to be like, you're
Yeah.
reading this thing because you like puzzles and you do genuinely
Yes.
like the machinations of things. And then all of a sudden it's like, or Victorian level
Yeah.
ones where you're reading it and like
Yes.
the science that they're basing things on was disproved 75 years ago. And so you're just like,
How do you
oh, there's no way I
huh,
could have gotten that because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is working on, science that was disproved
e
70 years ago.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. So, okay, so I have a completely different question now that, do you have a favorite historical mystery author? I know, sorry, that wasn't on our list of
No,
questions, so
that's
I'm
a really
throwing you.
good question. I have series that I read a lot. I oh, there's this great series that not that many people know about. He's a British author, and it's called The Skelton's Guide, Skelton. And
Oh,
I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head,
oh,
but he's got
okay.
a series of 3 books. It's the first one is Skelton's Guide to Household Poisons. The second one is Skelton's Guide to Suitcase Murders. And
Oh,
then the
wow.
third one is called Skelton's Guide to Flaming Corpses. So yeah,
Oh,
no, super colorful. But like
okay.
Arthur Skelton he's a defense attorney. And so he gets all of these cases
Oh,
where he has to prove someone's innocence, which you're not supposed to be doing. And it takes place in like 1920s, 1930s England. And they're
oh,
fantastic. They are
that's right up my
laugh out
alley.
loud funny. They're just really, really fantastic novels. And like, I don't know
Okay.
anybody else who's ever read them. So I'm just like, everybody read.
Really?
They're so good.
Oh,
Yeah.
I definitely will. Is it a author who's still producing?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the third one just came out this last year in 2022. But
Okay.
they're
Oh,
really
I'm gonna look that
fantastic.
up. Oh, thank you. I see that TBR. I can in my brain, my TBR just grew.
I know, and the covers too are these gorgeous like art deco like style covers. And so
Oh,
it's just like
really?
even if you were never going to pick it up from like Skeleton's Guide to like Flaming
Suitcase.
Corpses,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure if I want to read that. But the covers are so beautiful, you can't like not pick it
Really?
up.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's a
Yeah,
good tip. I hope everybody goes out and looks for that because
yeah, they're really
that's
pretty.
really interesting. If you like historical mystery, I mean, that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
really cool.
I'm so gonna go look at that and buy more books that I don't have time to read.
I know.
But I will. I'll get there eventually. It just may take me a couple years. Uh, so one of the things I loved was that the story was set in 1950s New York City, which is just way too fun. New York is one of my favorite cities ever. And seeing the city through Viviana's eyes is a true treat for the reader. So, what kind of research did you delve into creating such a compelling and immersive setting?
Oh, I'm glad it worked, first of all, because like, oh, New York City is one of those cities where everybody thinks it's one thing, but it's probably not. Like,
Mhm.
so many people go like, "Oh, I love New York City," and I'm like, "You have not been there in the last 20 years because it's
That's true.
entirely different from the New York City that like was there when I grew up. It changes so quickly." And so like my family is all from New York City. Like it's just like
Ah,
my great grandparents came here from a million different countries and then they just stopped and they didn't go
yeah.
anywhere else.
Well, the journey
Like
was tough enough.
exactly. It's like I joke with my parents that like, in the course of 50 years, they got as far as Midtown and that's
Midtown.
as far as they went. Like my parents were the first people to ever live outside the city. Like I was born in the city. Like my entire family is just
Really?
there. And so like this is my grandma's New York City. And she was born in the 20s. She's about the same age as Viv, concurrently. And it's like my grandma was really cool. So I was like, let's talk about
Oh,
her and just like, you know, the different neighborhoods that they lived in and how every single
yeah.
one had a different ethnic enclave and things like
Mhm.
that. And just like that kind of stuff makes me so happy. And I just like loved researching it as much as I could. It's like, and bless the digital era because I can like pull up
Yes.
maps and pictures and you
I
know
know.
and like the Library of
Uh-huh.
Congress has everything you could ever want. You're pulling up newspaper headlines, the weather. You can look up the
I
weather
know.
from like
I do all
specific
the
dates.
time.
It's like, what time
All
did
the
the
time.
sun set on June
Yeah.
27th, 1950? And it's like, you can find out.
Totally.
It's
I
awesome.
know. I love the weather research. I don't know why.
Being
I'm a
a
little
writer
obsessed with
before
weather.
Google must have been awful.
Can you well, I think you could get away with a lot more. Like, you
That's
could
probably
literally
true.
make it up.
Yeah.
Whereas now I go, "Was it actually raining that day?"
Yeah, I know, and you have to
Right?
be like, when was, like, nylon invented?" And you just have to be like, clickety, clickety, clickety,
Yes.
like, "Oh, it turns out it was a
Yes.
different formula for nylon before, like, 1956, so I have to
I
describe
know,
this
right?
nylon that doesn't exist anymore." And it's just like, "Oh, maybe it would have been
Oh,
better when I could make everything up." No one would know.
it's so true because then you take into where that fit in rationing and stuff like that too, right? Like,
Exactly.
different it's like a different ecosystem in that time
Yes.
period. So it's
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
My
I had to look up a toaster. When was an electric toaster a thing?
yeah,
Thankfully, it was in the early 20s.
thankfully.
But it
Like
but I was like, How did they toast their bread? I probably,
Do I have to hold it in front of
fire
a fire?
stove
Like,
and yeah.
like my
Like,
second book, I mentioned glass shower doors, and my editor had to be like, believe it or not, glass shower doors weren't invented until the 60s. You have to have them with a shower curtain. And I was like, you can knock me over with a feather that glass shower doors were not
really?
invented until the 1960s.
Yeah, I guess that's about right though, because I have visions of like, like pink porcelain and like olive green
Exactly.
porcelain and yeah, it was a big
No.
thing to like match your shower curtain
Mhm.
to your decor. Shower curtains are
Yeah.
such a pain.
I know.
Interesting. It, I
These
but you
weird
must
things
love
you
an
have to
editor.
look up. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like, but an editor who has all that historical knowledge, that's huge.
Oh, I know. I would have felt
That's
super, like, silly, you know, even though it's, like, completely
right.
inconsequential, like, I would have felt so goofy. It's like
Somebody
it's
would have
not like the
emailed you.
mystery revolves around shower doors, but I would have felt dumb.
I bet somebody would have emailed you
Oh, yeah.
to
That's
let
what
you
Twitter
know.
is for.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, it was well done. I did find it very immersive. I did also like some of the landmarks like FEO Schwartz and things like that. I'm like, yes, I know exactly where that was because it's
Exactly.
moved
Where it
since
was, because
where
it's
it
not
was.
there anymore.
It's not there anymore. And that was a real hard, I found that really hard actually,
Me
just as a
too.
visitor. I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean it's not here? Like
Yeah.
that was that a little hard. And now and it still has a decent location and a long line still to get in, so
Yeah, exactly.
clearly it hasn't affected any of the people, little people,
Yeah.
so
The
it was
toy
just hard as an
designers and stuff
adult.
like that. Yeah.
But, life does change and go on, so
Yeah.
the one constant is Central Park. So, I already noticed, and you just mentioned book 2 is coming soon. So I'm curious if you plan to write even more of the Girl Friday mysteries besides the 2. Will there be
I'm very lucky that I got a 3-book deal from Crooked Lane, so there's at least
nice.
3. I'm actually doing developmental edits on book 3, like, just before I started talking with you, so,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
I'm deep in that one, so that's all I'm contractually obligated to write, but hopefully, fingers crossed, there will be more.
I think there'll be more. Your debut is really good, so I'm
Thank
quite
you.
confident that you will find your way.
Yeah,
You
I
will.
was really surprised, but, the second you're like, "Oh, sweet, I wrote 1 book and now they want 2 more," and then you go, "I have to write
Oh.
2 more books." Oh, no.
And you sit down, you go, "How did I do that
Exactly,
again?"
exactly, and they wanted them really quickly, so I wrote, like, 2
Oh.
books last year alone, and by the end of by Christmas, I was like, "Maybe next time I'm gonna ask for more time."
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah,
that would be a challenge. I mean,
it was a
I've blown past my own deadline, which is not good, and I'm like, "Okay, new deadline, new deadline." It's
exactly.
like a fresh notebook, right? Get a fresh
Yeah.
notebook out, it'll all work out with a fresh notebook.
Exactly. I'm gonna take a
Eh,
month-long nap, and then I'm gonna open a new
yes,
notebook, and we're gonna start this over.
yes, and it's hard to write around December, January.
Oh, it
It's
really
it's
is.
a transitional time in the calendar, and I find it to be one of the biggest transitional times because everybody's mindset sort of shifts to the new year of, "Okay, we're gonna reset and go forward," but you may still be in the middle of your trenches of whatever manuscript you're working on, so
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, I'm there. I understand. Like, kicking my butt, and it's
Yep.
okay. It'll work
Yeah,
out in the end.
exactly.
Well, that's good. I'm glad there's going to be at least 3 to look forward to, so, you can start reading now. The next one comes out when?
The second one comes out in May, and then the third one should be coming out actually at the end of 2023.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is fast.
so 2 books are probably going to be released this year.
That's fast.
Yeah, it's a
Very
lot.
fast. Wow, good for you. That's very fast. Wow. Okay, so on that note, what does your writing and creative process look like? What does a day in the life look like
I
for you?
I'm very lucky that my husband also has a creative career. So, like, he understands that, it's just like there's gonna be hours where you just slam the door and it's like, "Don't bother me, stuff is happening." Like, or,
Yeah.
there's a time where it's like we both have creative hours in the morning. Like, that's when our brains really start to work.
Yeah.
So it's like we'll both like take our cup of coffee and like shuffle off to our respective, zones. And then usually the creative juices run out around noon and you just like emerge from the office just staring at each other going like, "Oh, that was hard." Like,
Yeah.
it's like, "Let's go run some errands and, like,
Yes.
decompress from what just
Get
happened this morning."
outside.
And then it's like you can go back and do, like, life for the rest of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. That like nobody comes in to do your laundry.
No.
Um, nobody cooks dinner.
No, nobody else cooks dinner, exactly. So it's just like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
guess I have to eat something that's not like granola bars and coffee." So,
Right?
guess I should
I
probably go to the grocery store.
chips and wine, I swear they are a meal in itself.
What are your writing foods? Is it chips mostly or, like mine is
I
M&M's?
don't eat when I write.
Oh, lucky.
It's here's the solution. Get such a skinny desk that hardly anything fits on it.
That's really smart, actually.
It wasn't a choice. It was just a situation. I don't have a door. I don't have an office. So I write in the middle of the house.
Gotcha.
So
You
my
have kids.
door closed is noise canceling headphones.
Super smart.
And because it's, although I really would love a door. Uh,
Even from the cats, sometimes I'm just like, "Oh, thank God for a door," because my cats would just, like, come up and just, like, jump all over everything, or, like, I have a
oh,
90-pound
yes, I love
dog, and
dogs.
he would just,
Oh,
like, knock everything over.
I'm here to see you with the tail.
Exactly. "I missed you."
I totally get that. Yeah. No, it's an office with a door is a luxury, and
Yeah.
I definitely that's on the list. Um, no
Good
pressure
or
to my
bad.
son, but eventually I will take his room over.
A
And I
piece
already
to
know
the
what
minute,
color I'm
honey.
painting
Like,
it, so
yeah, exactly.
here's your stuff. No.
Exactly.
I
Hope
love
you weren't
having him
attached to the
around.
paint color on the wall, like
That's right. Oh, I hope no, I love having him, so it's a good thing. But I would like a door. Just in case my family's listening, I would like a door.
I would like a door. Curtain, also acceptable, just barrier of some
And a heated
nature.
room. Not asking for a lot. So, okay, so you get up, you write, then you do the typical, is it about 4 or 5 hours that you put
Yeah,
in
4
and
or
then
5
you
hours of figuring it out, putting it down, reading and adjusting, and then, you need breathers where you're just like, "I need to step away because nothing good is happening for the rest of the day." Like, if I can write, but
yeah.
it's not gonna be good.
You do know that, right? Like, you have that barometer of, like, "Okay, I'm putting words on the page, but they're, like, costing me blood."
Yeah.
Right?
Like my husband worked for a composer, he's for a while back, who was just like, everybody writes something that's terrible. There's no such thing as someone who doesn't write something that's terrible. The difference is that people who are writers or composers or artists of any kind, you know what's terrible and what's not and what's good. And it's just like a lot of people don't have that barometer. A lot of people can't tell something that they write isn't necessarily great. And it's like that's what really makes like a working author or writer or composer or something versus someone who may not be like, finding the
The
success that they want. It's
distinction.
just like sometimes you just have
Yeah.
to go, I tried really hard, but it's still garbage. Like it happens.
And it does. It happens, and it's I think, like, I actually and that's why I think that for me, the story's been kicking my butt is that I stopped. I was like, "Okay, this isn't coming smoothly, and if it's
Mhm.
not coming smoothly and the characters don't know what they're doing and they're mucking around in my head, then I need to stop and revisit, where have I lost a track somewhere?"
Yeah,
And that's what I spent the last few weeks doing, and but then you find it again, you go, "Oh, wait, it was actually there, I just forgot that it was actually already there," and then you can carry on.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just like,
but you have to
what was the
stop.
context that I need them to be in order
Yes.
to make the tracks align and move forward?
Absolutely. Like, I tend to sit down and go, I'll read the last chapter that I wrote before I start the next one. So I have in my head where they are in time and space alone, like in a calendar, but
Mhm.
also location wise. How do they get from point A to point B? Or,
Exactly.
like they don't teleport.
Yeah. There's a lot of
So,
walking, like
a lot of walking, but so much can happen on those walks. Like it's
Exactly.
the thinking, the experiences, the setting comes in and the sensations and the feel, like the setting of summer in New York. That was so vivid for me because I'm like, yeah, it's stifling and hot, and
Yeah, and
nobody's
it
really
snows.
happy about
Exactly.
right? Yeah, but that's the New York experience in summer. So this is why
Yeah.
everybody leaves.
Exactly. It's why the
So
rich people bug out. It's awful.
exactly, and they had AC in their in their places. So
Exactly. The rest of us are
so
sitting there with box fans wishing for death,
right.
like
That's the difference. That's so true, and I think that you nailed that, and I think that's where the walking comes in, or the getting them from one place to another, or your characters need to eat. Like
Exactly.
they can't not eat. Although there's a lot of books out there where characters never eat.
That's what always confused me about that television show 24, whereas it's like
Yeah,
takes place over 24 hours. I was like, the man never has a snack. Like, I get grouchy if I go 3 hours and he's never just like chowing down on a Subway sandwich. Like, come on, give
right.
us some realism here.
It might be realistic because he's so slender,
Exactly. I'm like,
but
you
it's
can't fight
yeah.
terrorists on an empty stomach, Jack Bauer. Have a sandwich.
Exactly. That's so true. That's hilarious. So you've already told us that you're working on the developmental for book 3. How long
Mhm.
does it take you to do a developmental?
Not too long. Like, I really am blessed with being able to edit while I write. So it makes things a lot easier when you can go back and read something and just be like, well, nope. And like rewrite it or rework it and do things like that. Like, I don't usually write a vomit draft, where people are just like, I just need to get it out. I'm like, no, that can't, I'm way too controlling for that. Like, I
I was
can't
just
do
gonna
it.
say, no, I needed to get it out in the right order, in the right context, in the
Exactly.
right
Yeah, I would
yes.
never send
Mhm.
something to someone that wasn't, like, almost publishable, you know what I mean? Where it's like,
Yes.
my editor will send back things of just be like, "You have to better connect, like, these details or this things," or it's just but, like, rarely is she ever just like, "Wow, this entire subplot needs to go or be completely rewritten," It's just
Mhm.
that's just a controlling thing that my brain does where it's like, I won't let it leave my computer.
I completely understand. I edit while I write as well.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by people who can just like, "I'm just gonna tell a story and not edit it while I'm writing
Mhm.
it." I'm like, "Nope, too type A for that."
Yeah, that's it, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I it's funny, this book I'm working on right now is literally gonna change course and go out to my beta readers before it goes to my editor, and I am stressed about
Yeah.
that because I'm like, "No, no, it's not polished enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I need somebody to polish it all and make sure
Yeah.
that all the language is right, before they read it." But we're trying it this way in case beta readers pick up on something that I could fix before it goes to the
Right.
editor. But I was like,
Yeah.
huh? So
That's
I
so
think that's
stressful.
why it's so stressful. I'm like, yeah, I get stressed if I type something wrong in a Instagram post. I'm like,
I know.
my phone auto corrected me.
Exactly.
How do I fix that? You don't
Help.
is the answer.
Yeah.
But it is. So I can totally understand that it's but I think you're probably similar in that your draft 1 is kinda like a draft 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Like, I also don't plot. It's weird, like, I'm a pantser, I'm
Oh,
not a plotter, so it's just like
really?
s yeah, but,
Wow,
like,
how do those 2 worlds meet?
I don't know. So like
That's
I
impressive.
tried to plot book 3 and it was so much more frustrating to write it when I was trying to hit all the story points as opposed to just kind of like letting
Ah,
it more flow naturally. Cause sometimes I'm just
gotcha.
like, well, I thought that was normal human behavior, 2 months ago, but now I've gotten to the point where that's not how a normal human being would react to this at all. So I have to, go back and rewrite or rework like the personalities of people and stuff like that. I'm just like,
Right.
nah, just make it up.
Interest
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Wow. And so I'm a plotter, but I clearly went away from my plot this time. So and I think it's somewhere in between. Like you maybe don't have it written down as a plot, but maybe in your head you have an idea of where the story's going.
Yeah, that's
Like, do you
definitely
know
true.
who did it
Yeah,
before?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are kind of like you're somewhere in between there.
Yeah, I feel like I'll always have like the starting point, the ending point, and the climax in my head, of just like the grand arc of a
Yeah.
story. And it's just like you just have to hit those. But what happens in between those sorts of things is like anybody's guess until I write it
Yeah.
down.
Well, to the characters speak too, right? Like sometimes
Yeah.
they come in with some really strong ideas
Yeah.
that you have to now work around.
Exactly. It's like, oh, why did you do that? That's
Yeah.
difficult. That's silly.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so strong and powerful, and yet but now I have to rethink everything else for the next 3
Exactly.
chapters. Yeah.
How did they really commit this murder? Because now the original way, that,
It's not
that
good.
can't happen
Yeah,
anymore. Like,
that's it. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so isn't it fun?
yeah, exactly. The
I
things our
wouldn't do
brains
anything
do
else.
to sabotage us.
Yes. Oh, they're very good at that. Yeah. Yeah, very good at that. Just try meditating.
Yeah, exactly. Quiet with my own thoughts? Absolutely not.
And they just you tell them quiet, they're like 2-year-olds, they start talking. So true. Oh my goodness. So I saw this on your bio, and so we do need to talk about this because I have a little obsession with wine, and you were previously a wine and spirits journalist. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering first, how does one go about getting that job? And second, what sort of things did your job entail? And does any of that sort of spill over into, not no pun intended,
Oh,
into
no.
your writing?
I love puns. Keep them coming. But like, the first how you get it is I started off as that actually like my college boyfriend's older brother spent a year living in France and he loved wine. And then he
Ah,
came back to America and was like, I want to start like a wine something. I don't know what. And so I started working with him of just kind of like figuring out what kind of company he wanted to do. And so he first started out with like a free newspaper that he passed out in Boston of
oh,
just it
okay.
was called The Second Class and it was just like for younger people. This was back in the early 2000s of just like getting young people to talk about wine. Newsflash, I was not yet 21. So like
Oh,
should not have been
oops.
doing this. I was like 19 and I'm like this is probably illegal, but we're not going to talk about it. And
Yes.
then so
Prohibition's a
it
whole thing though, so, you
exactly.
know.
It became like an events company after I was done working with it. But I was like, I
Ah,
really like talking about because one of the things that I love telling people is that like wine growers are just farmers. Like it's the
they
same thing
are.
as growing green
Yeah.
beans. Like it's just they know everything there is to know about growing grapes, and the same way that other people know everything there is to know about growing green beans. It's not pretentious. It's just food. And
It's so
so
true.
it's just like I got to meet these really cool people. Then I moved to California, which was a boon for working in the wine industry.
Yes.
So for many years, I didn't do it. And then I got really tired of the job that I had. And I saw a Craigslist advertising for someone who was looking for an assistant. And I was like, I don't care. I just want a job that's not doing what I'm doing right now. And I went to his office, and it turns out he was a James Beard Award winning wine and spirits writer. And so I was like, I can do that. Like, that's not a problem. And so I basically became his ghostwriter for a little while. And then I produced
Wow.
his radio show. And then I also worked for the industry magazine that he was the editor in chief of. And it was just many years of lots of free alcohol.
That's not a bad
It
thing.
was a great job to
Oh my
have
god.
between like 22 and 28, like when I could still
Yeah.
metabolize alcohol at
Yeah.
the rate of a
Yeah.
22-year-old.
So true.
So it's mostly just chance,
Wow.
but just like enjoying it is all that really
Yeah.
matters.
So it does at any level, at
Yeah,
any
yeah,
level.
and so
Yeah.
it's just like
That's
it's
cool.
fun to meet with all these people who basically just like enjoy the best parts of life for a living. Where it's
Yeah.
like
They really
the
do.
wine growers are like the coolest people ever, and
Aren't they? I
they're so
agree, 100%. I love it. Yes.
they're like my
100%.
favorite people in the industry. I'm
Yeah.
like, forget if you own it. I don't want to talk to the guy who owns the multi-million dollar plot of land in Napa. Give me the guy who's like digging up
Yes.
the weeds and stuff.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. We were in Napa and we, sat down with, some lovely, lovely people, and it was like sitting down and talking to people that you've known your entire life but hadn't seen in a while.
Hmm.
And because it was just, and literally he said to me, "Oh, I'm just a grape grower. I'm a farmer. I grow grapes." And I was
Hmm.
like, "But this is like music in a glass."
Exactly. Exactly. And
But they're humble
they're
people.
very humble
Oh,
people. Not necessarily the people who buy like a quarter acre in Napa because they're, like multi-billion dollar like tech guys and they want to
they're looking
prove
for
that
an
they have.
investment. Yeah.
Exactly. Those people,
Different.
not that much fun. But like the
No.
guys who, the people, I shouldn't say guys, but like the people who actually like do the work to grow it and
Yes.
make it are just the most
Mhm.
fascinating, fun, down to earth,
Oh,
coolest people.
innovative too. Like they have to think on their feet and they have to problem solve on a daily basis because they live with what the weather gives them and what the
Exactly.
soil gives them. And like we got on the topic of smudge pots
Hmm.
and how back in the day somebody had to be out there in the field to monitor the frost levels so that they could take the smudge pots, which were carcinogenic at the time,
Yeah.
out
You
into
know,
the field. And, there's that. They didn't know that
yeah,
right then. But now they have frost alarms
I know.
that let them know. And so I asked him, I said, "So do you still get up when the frost alarm goes off?" He goes, "Not anymore."
No, exactly. He's like, "Oh, thank you, technology. I don't have to get up."
So it's so amazing. And in case anybody's wondering about what you do with frost as it arrives, because of course the hills dip
Yeah.
down, and in the lower valleys there's more frost. Those great big fans that you see in fields of grape fields are to circulate the air to pull up and warm the air so that the vines don't freeze. I learned a lot.
I have to tell you, I lived for a year in a small town north of Los Angeles called Ojai, California, and it's a big, like, resort town now, but, it's well known for growing citrus, and, like, half of
Ah,
California is known for growing
yes.
citrus, and I lived in the middle of an orange grove, and one
Oh,
night, I got woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by something that sounded like we were being besieged by military helicopters.
yep.
And my husband and I hit the deck and we're just like, what is happening? Like,
Who's
who is
attacking us?
exactly like who is coming to conquer Ojai, California? And then finally, we didn't sleep for the rest of the night. And then finally, we called our friend who lived down the road and he was like, Emily, those are the things that circulate the air to keep the oranges from freezing. And I was like, you really should have warned me about that in August when I moved here and not January when it started happening because it is terrifying.
Because you don't really know what they're there for and then when you put it together, though, that's so scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but also really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's very innovative. I was like, wow, this is so fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
it's a field, not literally, it is a field, but it is a
Yeah.
field of exploration where every challenge that's presented has to be navigated at the
Yeah.
human level.
Yeah.
And I think that's just it's so poignant to I think there's a similar path between writing and line making.
Yeah. I
I think
mean,
there's a
I just also appreciate like food now more than I ever could have before meeting these people and working with them of just like I also did a lot with like restaurants and things like that. It's just like the labor that it takes
yeah.
to make food available to you and especially for the I know now it's incredibly expensive, but compared to the
Mhm.
labor that goes into it, it is not expensive at all.
Isn't
And you
that
just
true?
like the grand picture of how food gets to your table, it has been brought into just
Yeah.
incredible stark reality for me in a way that I never would have appreciated through like my suburban upbringing where it was just like, yeah, hamburgers 89 cents. Like,
Yes, right. I
yeah.
remember when they were. Yes. Yes. They
So
had commercials about it.
exactly, exactly. So I just like I am so grateful for my time that I worked in like the food and beverage industry because it's just like the miracles that these people perform every day. For all
That's it.
intents and purposes, you should not have food at a supermarket because of how hard it
Right?
is to grow and to get
It's
it to you.
so exactly. That's exactly it. When, the appreciation level really got elevated for myself as well because I was like, a bottle of wine should not be $20.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
it's like this is a labor of love, but also a willingness to push past uncomfortable situations and keep going. And that is not necessarily as easy to find as the years go on.
It's true. It's
So
true.
it's yeah. You and I are gonna have to talk more about this
I
after
know.
because I'm like I am absolutely was
Yeah.
humbled, and it was one of the best trips just because I got to see so much of behind the scenes of what it takes and what it takes a family to do, an entire
Yeah.
family. It's
Yeah.
not just one person. It's everybody gets on board, and it's it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
I could talk at length about this. I was about to be like, and, but like,
I know, right? 'Cause like
it's a
we
book
have a
show, Emily.
book
Like,
show.
dial it back.
So why don't we end with this? Readers always like to know the answer to this question. So, our TBR piles are not nearly tall enough. What books are you currently reading on your bedside table?
Um, well, it took me like 2 weeks to finish. So I'm going to talk about Deepti Kapoor's Age of Vice, which is not like my usual read. Normally, I'm just like, sure, historical mysteries. Like, let me just eat them
Yeah,
all. But
but you
like, it
gotta
was
read
like
it in your genre. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Deepti Kapoor's Age of Vice is like a 500-page like journey into like the strange underworld of incredibly wealthy people in India. And it's like
Oh,
it's phenomenal, but also like I had to just kind of like take breaks from it where I was just like I need to not read about this for a day because it's
right.
just so much happening all at once. And it's like Edith Wharton on LSD and cocaine, and it's just so much happening. And it's not my usual type of read, but I'm taking a break from my podcast where I normally talk about like historical, like literary canon stuff. And I was like, I get to read a
Right,
popular book for the first time in
right.
4 years. And then I started reading this and I was like, this is too much. I need to go back to actual Edith Wharton, and not necessarily like Edith Wharton with millions of dollars. But it's a
Right?
brilliant book. I loved it. And now I'm taking a
Interesting.
breather with Agatha Christie.
I was gonna say Agatha Christie is always a good palate cleanser. It doesn't
Exactly.
matter who you are.
So realistically, I am in the middle of Murder on the Blue Train, and it's fine. You know, I love
Yeah.
Poirot. He's probably my favorite of
Yes.
all of Agatha Christie's characters. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna even it out with Hercule for a little while.
I think that's probably it cleanse the palate,
Exactly.
and then you have there's times, right? Seasons for reading different types of books, and even like literally seasons like winter, spring, summer, fall, different
Exactly.
things appeal.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Yeah.
You read about the obituary they had for Perot, right? When
No.
this you should Google this. This was really fascinating that I think now I'm trying to remember if I may be getting this wrong, so Google it for sure to get the facts. Um, the when she decided to not write any more novels with featuring him, I think the London papers had an obituary.
Oh,
Like I
that's
think it
so
was a real
sweet.
thing. I know it was. I don't know where I have no idea where half of the data
I'm gonna
that's
have
in
to read
my
this and,
head.
like, look it up because I I love him so much, and, like, he's
Such a
so
likable character.
off-putting to certain people, and then other people are like, "No, order." And I'm one of those people who's like, "No, I need things to be orderly."
Yes, exactly. There's it's a small percentage of the population. We just both happen to be in it.
My friend Carrie is like, "I love reading books about messy people," and I'm like, "I no,
Oh,
no."
no, I want to change them.
Exactly. No, they drive me bananas.
Oh my goodness, it's so funny. I don't know if you've ever heard of, Clifton Strengths,
Mm-mm.
which it's like there's 34 different strengths, and, there's so the I'm number 1 responsibility, which is probably not shocking. But I'm having a conversation. There's an author who actually runs strengths for writers, and so how you take your strengths and how you can lean into them to create better stories and more diverse characters and all of these things. But we're talking about our own individual strengths in this call, and she's saying, "Well, number 1 responsibility." So because I had said something about there seems to be not as much dialogue around responsibility
Yeah.
in like the group dynamic. I'm just wondering if is that because there's like a small percentage of writers have number 1 responsibility? And she's like, yeah, it's only about 10%. I was like, oh, okay. Okay, I understand that. Then
Yeah, that
you
explains a
gotta
lot.
appeal to the learners and the intellects and all of that. I get that. And she's like, oh no, I mean 10% of the world's population. And I went, oh. So
Oh,
I'm gonna be
okay.
that difficult person.
Yeah. Understood.
So,
Hearing you loud
but
and clear.
so it's good to know what your strengths are so that you can ask your strength to step back a bit when it's getting too
I'm like, "What is that called again?" Like, breaking out the actual pen and pencil in order
right.
to, like,
Strengths
write
for
this.
writers. I think it's actually faster, better, or something. I'll find it for you.
Thank you.
It's Becca Syme. She does a great job. She writes cozy mysteries. Becca Syme.
Probably
There you
tells you a
go.
lot about who we are as people. Like,
It does, doesn't it?
yeah.
Totally does.
Everything is better at the end.
Right? Oh, I'm not always that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just hard.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And
This was
I'm
so much fun.
so happy to have gotten to meet you and to read your book. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you
And
so
I'll be
much.
putting it on all 3 on my list because it was such a breath of fresh air. I really enjoyed it. And I will put a link, friends, I'll put a link below the video so that you can go and grab it. Um, I'll put the link to Amazon because that's the easiest one, but you probably can get it anywhere at your favorite bookstore. Just feel free to go and ask for it by name. It is Viviana Valentine Gets Her Man. Valentine. Sorry. See, I did it. I knew I was going to Italianize it for some reason.
It can be anything you want. I don't care. Just read it.
Viviana Valentine Gets Her Man. Okay. Thank you again. It was so great to have you.
Thank you. This was a
So
blast.
it was so much fun. Who doesn't love talking about books? So until next time, friends, grab a book and get cozy and have a good read. Bye, everybody.